Peace, family. Y'all know who it is. It's Bakari Lumumba, back once again, the progenitor of LumumbaSpeaks.com, a Black empowerment initiative where we believe we can gain a competitive advantage by always betting on Black. Before we get started, make sure you hit the subscribe and like button. So we're going to jump right in. Had a lot of people ask me questions. What did I think about ShaCarri Richardson? Her claims that there was a double standard regarding the fact that she was unable to compete in the 2020 Tokyo Olympics that we all know, of course, took place in 2021 due to the coronavirus. Then, of course, Kamila Valieva, the Russian figure skater who was allowed to compete in the 2022 Beijing Winter Olympics, even though she was found responsible or guilty of having testing positive for performance-enhancing drugs. So we're going to get right into it. My thoughts, right? Is ShaCarri Richardson right? There's 4 keys I think we need to take away from this. First and foremost, I think we all need to acknowledge that Black female athletes face more scrutiny than their white female counterparts. What do you mean, you ask? I'm so glad you asked. I'm going to give some examples. First and foremost, Florence Jonah Griffith, FloJo as she was known, still has a record, the world record for the 100-meter dash, women's 100-meter dash. Of course, she passed away many years ago. Unfortunately, she's transitioned to the realm of the ancestors. But you have people coming out making spacious accusations that she was on the performance-enhancing drugs, even though there were no allegations or even rumors or innuendo of her being on performance-enhancing drugs during her playing career, her career in which she competed. Second, we could look at Serena Williams, right? She's been tested more for performance-enhancing drugs than any of her white female counterparts. And there's even been accusations, very disrespectful accusations, that she actually is biologically male just because she was able to dominate her white female counterparts. As we all know that tennis is a white-dominated sport. And so I think, as we all know, they had some issues with her being able to compete, and not only compete, but dominate the sport, a sport that oftentimes has been a bastion of white femaleness. Number 2, I think we have to understand, and we acknowledge the situation with, of course, with Kamila Valieva and, of course, ShaCarri Richardson, that this is not an apples-to-apples comparison. As we all understand, ShaCarri Richardson, unfortunately, her mother transitioned, and she was dealing with some pain, which is understandable, from the loss of a loved one, loss of a family member, and, of course, the loss of the one who brought you into this world, her mother. And as a result, of course, she smoked marijuana to cope with, of course, the loss and grieving of her mother. But I think it's very important that we understand that ShaCarri Richardson was prohibited from competing in the 2020 Tokyo Olympics, not due to a ruling made by the International Olympic Committee, also known as the IOC, but due to being suspended by the United States track and field team, okay? Kamila Valieva, the Russian figure skater, was found guilty of having testing positive for performance-enhancing drugs. We also know that the Russian state has been found responsible for engaging in state-sponsored doping, where they're paying for and providing performance-enhancing drugs to their athletes who are competing on an international playing field. And so, as a result, unfortunately, she was able to get her positive test overturned due to a clause in which they believe that she was a protected person because she was a minor. I don't think it's right. I think if you are found responsible for performance-enhancing drugs, you should be suspended. There have been a number of figure skaters of different walks of life, different nationalities, different ethnicities who have spoken out against this, but due to arbitration, due to an appeal in international court, she was able to win and then does be able to compete. But I think it's also important to understand that the International Olympic Committee, IOC as they call it, was not supportive of this court decision, and they stated that if she was able to medal, they would not honor her performance and would not provide a medal ceremony and to honor her performance, even though, of course, we all know she crashed and burned. I think many people wish she would, and she didn't medal, but this was not something that was supported by the International Olympic Committee. So I think it's very important that we understand that this is not an apples-to-apples comparison. It's an apples-to-oranges comparison, because ShaCarri Richardson was suspended for breaking a team rule by the United States track and field team, and, of course, the young lady from Russia had to appeal her ban to the courts. And even though the court ruled in her favor, the International Olympic Committee was not in support of the ruling and stated, and I quote, they would not honor her performance and that if she did medal, they would not provide a medal ceremony. Number 3, I think it's also important to understand that when we talk about the issues that Black people face, not just here in America or the deaf and deaf against the Western diaspora, but globally, we're facing anti-black racism. We're fighting against what? White supremacy. We all understand that there's an external enemy that black people face, no matter where we are in the world, and that is what? Anti-black racism, white supremacy. But oftentimes we don't look at what the internal enemy, what when we talk about what? Alien self-disorder, anti-self disorder, the self-defeating, racial disempowering, self-destructive behaviors that black people find ourselves participating in that makes our walk in life much harder than it already is. And I think we have to also focus on accountability. I mean, I know many people are arguing that grace should be extended to ShaCarri Richardson, but I think we have to understand that we can't put ourselves in these type of situations. We have to stop getting our own way, shooting ourselves in the foot, or hanging ourselves with the rope that they give us, right? I understand the grieving of a loss of a family member. I myself have experienced this, but we also have to understand that if I'm competing at an international level, if I'm seeking to be the best of the best of the best, so as they stated the Man in Black many years ago, then I'm going to make sure that I don't give them any wiggle room to disqualify me when I know my goal is to win an Olympic gold medal and try to go down as one of the greatest female sprinters that have ever lived. And so I think that's very important. And number 4, I think it's also telling that when we look at many of the media personalities, right, and media social critics on the news cycles, when they talked about this issue, and these are individuals who are seemingly pro-black, seemingly black-minded, seemingly wanting what is best for our community. But there was no one calling her out. No one holding her accountable. No one saying, hold on now, this is an apples to oranges comparison, not an apples to apples comparison, and that you wouldn't even have to be making this statement months after the fact if you had handled your business and moved in a manner that was becoming of an international figure and a national athlete. So I think it's very important that we understand that number 1, as I stated, that this is not an apples to apples comparison, it's an apples to oranges comparison. Number 2, understanding and acknowledging that black women face more scrutiny in the sports field than their white female counterparts. We talked about FloJo and the spacious accusations of her being on performance-enhancing drugs. And of course, we even talked about Serena Williams, her issues, right, at Wimbledon, being accused of being biologically male because she was stronger than her white female counterparts, having points docked from her back in the 90s, her and her sister, Venus, for their beads and their braids falling onto the court. So this is something that we understand, right? And this is something that we should fight against because, of course, it's improper, it's unfair, and it's inequitable. But then also we have to also understand that we have to take personal accountability, right? And I know that for many people, black Republicans, this is a talking point, personal accountability. But for those of us in the conscious community, those of us who are black-minded, of course, Pan-Africans like myself, this is something we would call agency of Kuja Shakalia, self-determination. We have to make sure that we're not getting in our own way. And then last but not least, even in the so-called pro-black community, so-called community in which people are advocating for black people, sometimes we have to call a spade and say when you're wrong, you're wrong. So those are my thoughts, my 4 takes on the case of is ShaCarri Richardson right? Let me know what you have to think. Make sure you hit the subscribe and like button. Until next time, peace.